everyone. I can't see your faces, unfortunately, but I'll try to imagine. And I'm very honored to be part of this conference, and I really appreciate the invitation. So I'll try to remain within time and allow us about 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. And you can see also my Alberta Health Services email at the bottom. So please feel free to contact me if your question hasn't been answered because we ran out of time. So let's get going. Let's have a little overview of what I will be talking about today. So we will start with a very brief and quick overview of some of the treatment approaches and the theories that are behind those approaches, so that you can kind of have a little idea of especially the commonalities of these approaches have in therapy. So I'm going to start with a brief presentation of Ellen Shore's right brain psychotherapy, and then maybe a little bit more detail in Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, and then the approaches that I have selected, which is not a complete overview of body-based therapies. There is more, but these are the ones that I am most familiar with. Somatic experiencing, sensory enhanced yoga, and mindfulness-based stress reduction. We're going to have some time to go over and discuss the common features of these approaches and also how we can integrate this to our practice, including our telehealth or virtual practice. And in this presentation, we're also going to get a chance to practice 3 yoga mudra exercises that you can use in your practice for grounding and anxiety, and then hopefully we will have time for discussion and Q&A. So on a small note, when we are going to do the practices, I will be the person facilitating because our numbers are too large for us to be able to arrange breakout rooms. So I will invite you to notice the language that I'm using, which is also trauma sensitive language based on both Emerson's work and something that is trained and emphasize in sensory enhanced yoga. So let's start with a grounding exercise. Let's all arrive. I know that there are still, I can see in the numbers of participants, people arriving, but just in service of time, I'll invite everyone to just bring your awareness into your bodies and to here and now and noticing your breathing wherever you can feel your breathing. And I'm going to invite you to choose between one of the 2 hand positions below, which we use for usually to evoke safety in sensory enhanced yoga. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the yoga mudras a little bit later on in the presentation, but I wanted us to have the practical experience of it first. So one of these is called the Boo Mudra. So I'll invite you to make a V sign, a victory sign with your index and middle finger, and then the ring and the pinky finger will be folded underneath your thumb. So this is the Boo Mudra that we can actually plug in if you like imaginary to the earth, or if you can be sitting on the floor, then um, you can actually plug in to the floor, imagining that it is connected to the ground, or you can practice it in this way. And you can also do that on your both sides on your chair. And then the other one, if you choose to use that one, is the Adi Mudra. And we're going to fold our thumb in our palm for that one. And then fold our 4 fingers on top of our thumb. And this is grounding. For those who may be also working with children, one of the analogies that you can use for that is hiding our turtle for safety inside our shell. And now I'm inviting you to bring your awareness to your breath and then to the base of your torso as well. This is the area of our body that we can that can help us to ground. And what I'm going to do is I will read the affirmation below 3 times for you. And as you're deeply and slowly breathing, I'll invite you to either repeat it quietly to yourselves or repeat it out loud after me. Um, Before I do that, the Adi Mudra, I just noticed that my hand is still lingering up here. You're welcome to have your both hands in Adi Mudra um, position and then place it face down, your palm down on your lap. And I'm going to read the affirmations 3 times for you. As I'm bringing my awareness into my body, I nurture a deep sense of safety and connection with the earth. As I'm bringing my awareness into my body, I nurture a deep sense of safety and connection with the earth. As I'm bringing my awareness into my body, I nurture a deep sense of safety and connection with the earth. And now, in your own time, you're welcome to come out the practice and take a comfortable position for the rest of the presentation. Now I'll invite you to have a little self-reflection, or if you're in the same room with other practitioners, maybe a very brief, in a few words, discussion about why would you combine bottom-up or somatic practices and top-down approaches? What are some situations or clients that may call for it? And if you would be hesitant to do so, what would be your hesitation? And that can maybe guide, help you to set your intention in how you listen and what you take away from this presentation. Now, my own reasons for using bottom-up or somatic approaches is that I find that they help the clients to be more prepared for cognitive work. So if their anxiety is too high or they're not able to talk about some experiences, then that grounding and safety evoking features of somatic work helps them to prepare also for deeper emotional work as well and address the resistance when the client is refusing to, for example, talk about some issues that are important in therapy. Now, this is the most fabulous, intricate, and creative information processing machine nature has ever invented. That's my belief. So I say to myself, why work with only part of it when we can work with all of it? I'll start with Ellen Shore's right brain psychotherapy, and I'm not going to read out all of the slides. The slides will be available to you on the website. You will have received the link, and it will be available on the SAOT website and the conference folder as well. So some keywords from this Ellen Shore quote that I would like to emphasize is that using the right brain to optimally be effective in treating the regulatory and the relational aspects of the person. And the right brain will actually allow us entry into the unconscious mind, the implicit and bodily based self of our client. Now, one thing with the right brain psychotherapy that I would like to bring your attention to is that many addiction and mental health therapists, um, I find, tend to be many of us left brain dominant just because our education system selects for it. So we might choose to invest some time and energy in our own work for our own right brain work. So what I really like about Ellen Shore's right brain psychotherapy is that he has developed a regulation theory based on developmental neuroscience and developmental psychoanalysis. So it combines attachment theory and focusing on the origin and therapeutic treatment aspects of the subjective implicit self with the latest neuroscience. So to have a quick overview of this, now our left brain does the L's. So it does the explicit emotion regulation that is performed by the verbal left hemisphere, such as logic, lists, language, numbers, sequences, rules, and order. And usually we use the left brain if we're doing, for example, cognitive behavior therapy, analytic, or psychodynamic therapy. And then when we include the right brain, then we will be including the implicit affect regulatory process that is performed by the right hemisphere, evidenced by neuroimaging stories. So then we will be inviting into our therapy room the rapidly and automatically processed facial expressions, vocal quality, eye contact, all those subtle things about tone and volume of our voice, the patterns and speeds of our verbal communication, and the subliminal communication that gets conveyed. And that will contribute to the unconscious establishment of a safe and healing environment. So this is another quote from Ellen Shore. And what I like about this one is that it emphasizes the use of the nonverbal and relational aspect of the relationship as the foundation, and which occurs in the right brain as the foundation for our work. And then on top of that, we can then also place other verbal techniques. And so that's what I mean by combining the two. And now, Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory. This theory was developed for a very long time and then compiled by Stephen Porges in his book Polyvagal Theory in 2011. And it explains the relationship between the autonomic nervous system and our social behavior. Emotional and social behavior and self-protection responses are explained in this theory from the perspective of neurophysiological patterns of autonomic regulation. And this is a framework that is used in understanding of resilience regulation and enhancing therapy methods, especially trauma therapy methods. Now, in a very brief nutshell, Porges's polyvagal theory brings together three autonomic subsystems. And I like to think of them as neural platforms for social behavior. So these are autonomic nervous system states, three states mediated, two of them by the vagus nerve, and then one of them by the sympathetic nervous system. But when we actually visualize it, imagine it as neural platforms, then we have three neural platforms that we are working from. Unfortunately, I don't have three hands. And then we're that actually filter and determine our perception of what's happening and then our response to it. And based on what neural platform is supporting our nervous system and is dominant at the time, that's what will determine how we perceive and how we respond to the same event that is occurring. So the first one, the newest one in the hierarchy of development, is the social engagement platform that is mediated by ventral vagal dominant system. So that is the front part of our vagus nerve. So vagus nerve is a nerve that extends from our brain down beside our spinal cord. It is after spinal cord one of the thickest nerves, and it innervates some areas in our head, face, neck, and our internal organs. So it is responsible partly with homeostasis and our survival mechanisms like self-protection responses. So the social engagement platform supports prosocial behavior, and emotion involved in maintaining health, growth, and restoration. So, this is the platform or this is the system that we would like to be in the majority of the time. And then when there is a perceived threat or when the threat increases and our tend and befriend systems aren't appraised by our brain, the self-protection parts of our brain, our neuroception, as not protecting us in that situation anymore, then our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and we move to the fight and flight platform or nervous state, which is more active and energetic self-protection response. And then the third one, the oldest of the systems, from the time when we were jawless fish, so that's before we were mammals, before we were lizards, the freeze platform was available to us. And it is also available to newborn babies as fully developed, whereas the social engagement, the ventral vagal, develops within the context of the relationship with the caregiver and the attachment. So, the freeze platform is the immobilization or the conservation state. And it kicks in if the fight and flight fails and the perceived threat increases. Now, the thing with the freeze platform is that that conservation state is meant to be very quick state to be in and out so that it saves our lives and otherwise we would be dead. Just like imagine if I'm drowning, right? My body will switch to conservation state to really optimize the blood flow and oxygen to the vital organs. And then once I'm resuscitated, I should be back out of the freeze response. And so you can imagine that there is this response also is associated with very high cost of doing business. This is the expression that Kathy Kane uses in her trainings. And she also has this lovely book, Nurturing Resilience, if anybody is interested, especially those of you who may be working with early trauma. A little bit more about the polyvagal theory. Now, one important objective of somatic psychotherapies is to rebuild or adjust the developmental or the neural platforms of regulation so that we can move the clients or the clients can begin to move from a system of high cost of doing business that may be the habitual way, the way that the nervous system has endorsed because it has saved our lives. And so it says, okay, this is working, so this is what we're going to do every time. Two, a smoother, a more flexible, a more adaptable stress-oriented system. So if we look at these three nervous systems or nervous system states, then that smooth movement between these three states, depending on and adaptive to what is going on the outside, on our situation, is what we would like to achieve, and that would be the regulated state. Whereas the dysregulation that we would like to actually move out of and towards healing is when we get stuck in a response pattern that is inappropriate to the situation at hand and it is too costly for the situation. So if I'm in a situation where I need to negotiate and problem solve by talking to other people, then I need to be in a place where my nervous system is functioning in a ventral vagal dominant way in the social engagement system. Whereas if my self-protection part of my brain, the neuroception, has decided that this problem is actually something that is very threatening for me, and that my go-to response would be the dorsal vagal complex, which would be the freeze response, then I might actually freeze and not be able to access my words, which may actually happen during the presentation, when you're talking to many people and that evokes some anxiety. Sometimes we can't access our words and we can't find our words. So that can happen to me in this situation as well. And now, just as an example of the application of polyvagal theory, I'm going to let you know a little bit about the somatic experiencing work. So somatic experiencing is developed by Peter Levine, and you can see how closely he tends to work with people. Um, and one quote that I really enjoy from Peter Levine is, he says, trauma is a fact of life. It does not, however, have to be a life sentence. So somatic experiencing also carries the underlying belief that within the context of healing relationships, trauma can be transformed into resilience. So you can see also how Ellen Shore's right brain psychotherapy also fits with somatic experience. So I have also included the websites that you can go to for more information, or if you choose to take a full training of these approaches. Somatic experiencing is a method that is body oriented, and it is used for the healing of trauma and other stress disorders. So it's been developed throughout 45 years of career by Dr. Peter Levine and his multidisciplinary team right now, which is all over the world. And it combines the study of stress physiology, psychology, ethology, biology, neuroscience, indigenous healing practices, and medical biophysics. And the SE helps to release traumatic shock, which is key to transforming PTSD and the wounds of emotional and early developmental attachment trauma. So what we usually do with SE is that the therapist assesses where a person is stuck in one of those neural platforms, whether fight, flight, or freeze responses. If we're pretty much stuck in the first one, the social engagement, that's where we want to be. So, and then we use the clinical tools of SE to resolve these fixated physiological states so that we can gain better access to the appropriate state depending on what the situation is in the here and now, and therefore no longer the traumatic memories or the trauma itself, the past intruding with the future. If we think of it from the point of view of Dr. van der Kolk's definition of trauma, he said trauma is the inability to be in the here and now, to be present. So what we do in SC is we gently facilitate the completion of incomplete self-protection responses and the thwarted survival energy bound in the body, therefore releasing that survival energy and making it available for us. And gently in that way means that we are helping the client to remain within their window of tolerance by using all of those actually nonverbal presence of the therapist and the guidance and the other SE techniques that we have also quickly overviewed in the right brain psychology of Ellen Shore. So basically, we are combining the mindful awareness of the here and now and also helping the client develop a larger capacity to be able to feel and tolerate their sensations and emotions. And so we are fostering the client's ability to be present fully in the room with us and in their social engagement system, while maybe dipping their toes in a little bit into the freeze or fight flight response within the context of the past difficult experiences, and then come back to here and now. So it is having one foot in the here and now and one foot in the past in a very controlled and gentle way, in a way that the client can be present to and can tolerate. And we negotiate the trauma that way. So we'll move on to sensory enhanced yoga and have a quick overview of that one. So sensory enhanced yoga is developed by an occupational therapist, Lynn Stoller, And she combined the ancient wisdom of yoga with OT and some other trauma-informed theories, including polyvagal theory and in developing sensory-enhanced yoga. And then her research was actually conducted with the active servicemen in U.S. Army in Iraq, active duty military personnel. And her research results showed that the participants had improved, significantly improved 16 out of 18 um, items on mental health and quality of life factors. A very brief overview of sensory enhanced yoga. So what we do in sensory enhanced yoga, which also incorporates sensory trauma informed and trauma sensitive language, is we focus on sensation, movement, and breath in present moment awareness. So that groundedness and that present moment awareness is increased and achieved by being in our body, being present to our breath, and we combine these with the cognitive aspects of, our the the spiritual and the cognitive attitudes that we would like to install. And some of those attitudes are also are it are within the qualities of the postures and the yoga forms that we are practicing. Stoller, for sensory enhanced yoga, developed two models, the model of well-being and well-doing, and transdisciplinary model of post-traumatic growth. Due to time constraints, we will not be able to go through these models in very detail, but I have made a very kind of brief a simplified version of these models combined. So when we look at 3,000-year-old yoga practices that is based on human nature, and then combine that with occupational therapy models and practices, and also polyvagal theory and the latest neuroscience, what we arrive to is 5 levels that we are integrating or we are aiming to integrate through sensory enhanced yoga. So the first level is the Anamaya Kosha, which is our physical being. And the experience would be that we are aiming to evoke is I feel safe. According to maybe the equivalent of that in model of human occupation, Moho would be personal causation. And this is the foundation and physical boundary within which our elements reside and our survival depends on it, and hence the safety within our physical bounds. The second one is pranamaya kosha, which is energy and signified um, with the sense of I feel calm. And the Moho equivalent would be capable, feeling capable. So this is the life energy that fills the physical body and manifested by the breath and beating of the heart. So this is also something because the breathing and the heart is also an integral part of the polyvagal theory and the social engagement system. This is how they also connect. So the third one is Manomaya Kosha, our mental and emotional being. And the phrase would be, I feel clear. And the Moho equivalent would be the feeling of competence, controls habitual and conditioned thoughts and actions. So we are moving a little bit towards the cognitive, the mental domain. The fourth one, Vijnamaya Kosha, would be the wisdom body or wisdom self. And this one would be signified maybe with the phrase of I feel uplifted as the intention, and becoming more adaptable in our daily functioning in our lives, and becoming a witness to our mental chatter so we can see the larger picture. And the last one is Anandamaya Kosha, which is spiritual and bliss, signified or can be expressed by the phrase I feel empowered, and the Moho equivalent would be self-actualizing. And this is a state of optimal being and doing. So if you are also wondering where the metacognition or the witnessing of DBT or that observer mind is, it would be the fourth one, the wisdom and the witness. So continuing our brief and quick flying over these approaches, mindfulness-based stress reduction developed by John Kabat-Zinn. MBSR is an 8-week mindfulness-based intervention program, and it is the oldest, the most researched, and the first of its kind in the Western world. If you would like to actually take the course, the website is mindfulnessinstitute.ca, which is in Edmonton. So John Kabat-Zinn has defined mindfulness meditation as the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Now, what I like about this 4 elements of mindfulness is that this is something that actually one of my clients discovered, that when we talk about our full brain functioning, my whole brain functioning, Dan Siegel's model, if you're familiar with it, then we would have the hand model of the brain, where this would be the spinal cord, your brain stem, your limbic system, and your cortex, and this would be the prefrontal cortex. Then we would have the 4 elements of mindfulness coming and hugging and soothing our emotional centers and regulating. And these are the fibers that mindfulness practice actually does grow, the fibers in our prefrontal cortex that reach out to our limbic system and help downregulate, for example, intense, difficult emotions. And there are very many benefits of MBSR, such as reducing stress, anxiety, reduce depression relapses, increase empathy, improve emotion regulation, sense of well-being, cognition, sleep, and many more. And it enhances the effects of other medical treatments. And this is a list. I'm not going to go through all of them just for time again. But this is what MBSR, the meditations that it contains, and MBSR practice and the training starts from body scan. So, well, it starts from awareness of breath and body scan, and it emphasizes our presence in our body, and the training also includes, because it's in group format, journaling and discussing how we can integrate mindfulness-based stress reduction or mindfulness practices in our daily life. Now that we had a quick overview of all of these approaches and theories, let's talk a little bit about the common features of these approaches. So, for example, if I take somatic experiencing SE, SE first and foremost emphasizes the therapist's regulation and presence in the therapy room. So you see how that again combines with, is consistent with Ellen Shore's right brain psychotherapy, because if I'm genuine, if I am regulated, then in that resonance field, my client can find safety and regulate. Because what happens is that when you have 2 nervous systems in the room together, and even on Zoom, when they are connected, even electronically, or even on the phone, what happens is that when I am feeling safe and my nervous system is in that social engagement state, the other nervous system will tend to attune with that and experience that nonverbal intrinsic sense of safety. And we also need to be emotionally available as we are regulated, because if we are not regulated as therapists, then we can't be emotionally available, because we will be in our either fight, flight, or freeze platforms, and therefore not able to connect, but maybe more kind of in a very subtle way, more self-isolating, even though from the outside, from the explicit parts from the left brain. We're still using the right words. We still might have a smile on our face, but the client's right brain will sense our right brain and also in which neural platform we're operating from. So this is also akin to the intrinsic regulation of a parent figure. Um, Tracking the client's state, we will feel actually if we are really also paying attention to the signals that our right brain is receiving, which state or how regulated our client is with us in the room. And it is absolutely essential, especially if we are going to revisit some previous difficult experiences of our client, that we are able to start from and bring our clients, no matter how much time it takes, how many sessions it takes, to bring them into social engagement, bring them into this new relationship with themselves and with us as a therapist in that feeling of safety. And with that sense of safety, they'll be able to be in the social engagement system, which then will allow them to grow, increase their resilience, and replenish, rejuvenate. So, so I think I've emphasized enough the idea of doing this together, holding the emotions together, offering that therapeutic holding environment that we talk about in psychoanalysis or psychodynamic therapy. So all of these methods then, because of their ability to ground the client or teach the client to ground and be present and experience safety in the here and now, will help the client to tolerate and transform them into adaptive emotions within the safety of here and now, rather than the their habitual experience of emotions maybe being intolerable, and therefore they might have shut them off and be in freeze response, or the emotions may come in too strong waves with a lot of energy that they would be in their fight and flight response or platform. More of the common features, they support the client in developing their emotional capacity, as we talked about, and they also help the client to develop their witness, the observer mind, and therefore grow the distance from their emotional and sensational experience. And I will go in more detail in a few minutes about that too. In that way, when there's a bit more distance, then the emotions and that intensity does feel less scary, and they will gradually learn to not automatically react to attenuate their internal experiences that in long term sometimes gets us into trouble, such as addictions or behaviors that we regret after. They also use resourcing, all of these approaches. They use resourcing to enhance the here and now awareness. And that's very essential in revisiting trauma memories in therapy, for example, and it also in their daily life increases their ability to ground and reduces dissociation flashbacks and dysfunctional coping. Okay, so some words about telehealth. I like this. I really want to thank you for these great telepsychiatry sessions, doctor. The format lends itself to easing my anxiety and feelings of inadequacy around others. And I love the doctor's choices of what is not in the camera. How to make lemonade with what we have if we are not able to see our clients and we're having to use Zoom sessions or phone sessions. Now, the first thing is it does require some different boundaries around confidentiality and safety. For example, you would want to ask your client to not just turn off their session or leave the session abruptly if you're not sure how safe they feel, right? So you might want to have a mutual agreement on that before you started digging deep into some things may be a bit challenging. And also not to use public Wi-Fi connection, and being in a place that is private where they won't be overheard. And also, while they're in a quiet and private place, maybe their home, they can also have some resources that you wouldn't have access actually in your office, like a warm drink, their teddy, their fidgets, their soft blanket, the things that they can use at home for their own comforting. And then they can be more present in the session. They can also play around with their video image, right? So if they're self-conscious and they don't want to be on camera, then they can turn off the camera, right? Or they can right click on their video and choose to hide themselves on in their view, but then I can still see themselves, see the client. In that way, I can actually have more information about how they may be feeling inside through their nonverbal, and then use that information to help increase their awareness of or their witness. And and also in that way, they can still access my verbal and nonverbal communication, my facial expressions, my body language. So another thing that you can use is, for example, I might back up a little bit, right? I might show them some body exercises, mudras or any other exercises, or I can show them, self hugging. It's easier to describe things that are soothing like this, right? Um, it is easier to show it on video, even if I don't see them. And also, if um, they have a little bit more distance from the camera, then it's easier for you to see their body language as well. Now, attunement is very important. When we attune with others, Dr. Dan Siegel says, we allow our own internal state to shift, to come to resonate with the inner world of the other. This resonance is at the heart of the important sense of feeling felt that emerges in close relationships. Children need this attunement as much as adults do. So when I'm being intentional with my own body language, I'm also seeing and listening more to clients' responses when I'm doing a therapy session on Zoom. Being authentic is very important, because that right brain to right brain principles are still there when we are on video. And therefore, of course, the good therapist self-care will be important, so we can actually really be emotionally present and available for our clients to hold those difficult emotions together. Another thing I use the Zoom for, which is a really good excuse, I find, that I ask for more descriptions of their experience. So that helps foster self-awareness, especially on the phone. I can do that. I can't see you. Can you describe me? Your environment, your body posture, how you're feeling inside with that, right? So that I'm fostering the development of their inner witness, and also creating a little bit of that um, defusing, or ability to not basically fuse with their inner experience, but have a bit of distance. Somebody raised a hand, but I'm really not sure what what to do with that. Okay, we're almost done, and then I'll look at the boxes. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can ask your client to give you a tour of their living space. So they can get to know, you can get to know them in their own home environment. And therapists can teach them how to self-regulate in their own environment using their own tools for self-soothing. And this facilitates the transfer of skills. And as I said before, you can also use self-touch, which is very powerful. You can email some materials. You could email, for example, body maps, and then ask them to color, or create some visual representations also of their experience in session. Now, telephone allows you to listen more when you can't see. And on the telephone, my biggest suggestion would be slow down. Give your client and yourself the gift of time to allow for the small nuances to get noticed. We slow down a lot in somatic experiences, make space for the experience to unfold. You can use the silence wisely. You can have them describe their environment that will help with bringing their awareness in the here and now and grounding. And you will focus more on the face, tone, inflection, the choice of words, verbal empathy, all of that, which are again the right brain functions. And you can invite descriptions of their self observation skills, and you could actually use visuals and some written guides if you emailed them before. Okay, so we're going to now move into the practical two mudra exercises for you that you can use. One is uplifting and one helps reduce anxiety. And they are both very gentle exercises. Now, a word about mudras. They are from the traditional yoga practice and they are mostly hand gestures. And they bring forth our own inherent delight and enchantment, which are always present and waiting to be awakened. So I will invite you now to practice Pala Mudra, and I'm going to show it to you. You can remain seated if you would like. And this is from Lynn Stoller's book, so is the affirmation that I'm going to again read to you 3 times. Maybe for the sake of time, I'll read to you twice. So for Pala, we're going to cup our hands and place the left hand palm upward, right? On Zoom, if you would like, you could mirror. So this would be your left hand, palm upward, 4 finger widths below your navel, and your right hand at the level of your navel, hands touching the abdomen, and you can hold your elbows slightly away from your body. And breathing slowly and deeply, I'm going to read you the affirmation twice. As I follow the rhythmic rise and fall of my breath, I experience a greater sense of calm and tranquility. As I follow the rhythmic rise and fall of my breath, I experience a greater sense of calm and tranquility. And now I'll invite you to come out of this, this practice and we'll move on to the ushas, which promotes confidence, vitality. It's a subtle, uplifting mudra that you could use, for example, with someone who may be feeling depressed. So for ushas, I'll invite you to interlace the fingers loosely and rest your hands on your lap, palms facing upward. Maybe I'll do this so you can see. The tips of your thumbs may slightly touch. And as we are breathing slowly and deeply, I'm going to read you the affirmation from Lynn Stoller's book twice. As my mind becomes more calm and clear, I more easily recognize life's infinite possibilities. As my mind becomes more calm and clear, I more easily recognize life's infinite possibilities. And now, in your own time, I'll invite you to come out of the practice and we're going to open it up for questions and answers. All right, let's see. Nothing in here. Okay. I think I might need to stop the screen sharing if everybody saw my cartoon. And okay, now I can see the chats. All right. Mm, let's see. One question is, where did you receive your sensory enhanced yoga certification? Do you need to be a yoga instructor prior? So some of the participants in the training were yoga instructors, and some of them were clinicians who were not yoga instructors. So no, you don't have to be a yoga instructor, and I am not one yet. So what I would recommend though is that if you are really going to run a yoga class, then to pair up with a yoga instructor. So then one person would be sensory enhanced yoga trained and the other person would be a yoga instructor. In that way, you're both covering your clinical and trauma sensitive ground and the yoga knowledge and instruction. um, all of the faculty in Sensory and Enhanced Yoga Institute, and you will see actually the website in the presentation that you can download. You've got the PDF. That is going to be, all of the instructors are actually yoga instructor trained. Some of them have done masters in yoga therapy, and some of them are veterans as well. You can type your questions into Q&A. Okay, that's from Andrew. Where did you receive did that? Sorry, I wasn't able to be here for the first 15 minutes. Not sure if you already said. If we can get a copy of the lecture notes and recording, yes, you can get a copy and you can access the recording as well. I believe in SAOT's site, unless Andrew types in the chat otherwise. Okay, I'll keep reading. Oh yeah, okay. Robin responded to that. There should be an email link to the shared drive where the handouts were posted. The slide, and then Jennifer Sadowski writes, the slide handouts link is in the last reminder email from Edmonton Mental Health and Addictions OT Practice Council, etc. You can read. So let me see if there are more questions here. Please take a moment to complete your evaluation. And there's the link over there, so we can continue to plan events that are meaningful to you. So if anything that you've seen, I've gone over too fast and you would like actually a specific presentation of its own, you could request that too, and we'll try to arrange that. Could you please elaborate on or clarify the positioning of the hands for Bull Mudra? Should the fingertips be touching the ground or not? So for the Bull Mudra, so this is the position of the fingers. And we usually, the way I've learned it is to have it like a triangle. And no, they don't have to touch the ground. We sometimes practice it also standing, and then we can imagine it plugged into the ground. That we have that connection. But if you're sitting on the floor or on a yoga mat, then it can touch the ground, and that might actually bring an increased sense of grounding because of um, the sensory feedback, right? The proprioceptive feedback. The nice thing with sensory enhanced yoga is that they have incorporated a lot of like vestibular rocking back and forth, for example, that some of the yoga sequences can allow, or made their own sequences for that. So it does have a lot of like sequences and postures that reduce arousal, reduce anxiety. There's a lot of emphasis in proprioception, proprioceptive, increased proprioceptive input. There is positioning, for example, for restorative practice, breathing practices, and it's very, very trauma sensitive and trauma informed. Okay, let's see. Um, Is it more productive or effective if you say affirmation in the client's native tongue, or is English fine? If you're capable of using the client's native tongue, and if they are happy with that, if they find that more connecting, then you are welcome to. It really depends on your relationship with the client and your own capabilities as the therapist, and what the client's preference is, because we don't know, like I don't know unless it's a client that I know, what they have associated their native tongue with and what they have associated English with if it's their second language. So if they find it more grounding more like a safe home if they hear it from in their native tongue, then that would be helpful. However, if their native tongue brings back any trauma memories that are in their earlier life that they may have experienced in their homeland, right? Maybe they don't prefer that. So it's something to consider. I'm in Vancouver and unfortunately forgot about the missed the presentation. Recording will be available. And thank you, Indra, saying thank you, Yoshim. Like the presentation. Thank you for the feedback, Indra. Huh. Do you have experience using these therapies in art-based therapy? I like combining. So when you have trainings and interests in different modalities, what it actually does is it gives you more freedom to be eclectic, right, in your interventions. So yes, I do combine them because being an OT, I'm very client-centered, right? We're all very client-centered. So we are good at assessing the client's strengths and what can be therapeutic modalities and activities for them, because any occupation can be enabling in therapeutic occupation. And so whatever that may be, if it is yoga with the proprioceptive and grounding effects and the art, or the proprioceptive, for example, awareness that the person draws from when they're, for example, doing clay work, they can all be combined. Um, Thank you for the feedback. Let me see if there are any other questions. We have 1 minute. I can take one more question. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question, please feel free to email me. My email is in the first page of the presentation at the cover page. On slide 24, could you please clarify what you mean by resourcing? Okay, resourcing is when we tap into and when we explore, which is the first thing I do, especially if I'm doing trauma therapy with a client, of what increases their presence in the here and now, what allows them to be in the social engagement state. For example, what allows them to be curious and humorous and laughing when something new emerges, because we are exploring novelty with the client. We are inviting them to try something new, respond to their environment in a new way, use their nervous system in a new way. And if they are in fight, flight, and freeze response, that will be threatening. However, if they're able to achieve curiosity and humor, those kinds of things, those belong to the social engagement state, right? So anything that brings that, it can be a memory, it can be a place or an imaginary place that they enjoy, it can be something that they can touch, it can be a person or the internal image of a person. So all of those are resources that ground the person and also bring their nervous system into that feeling of safety. Okay, it is 1 o'clock. Some of you probably have to leave, and I can keep going a few more minutes for those who can stay. Thank you very much for the. Are there any risks to these practices? Um, Always use your clinical judgment, right? Especially yoga, you need to know your client's physical capabilities and also be able to adapt. So during the training, we talk about that. We talked about that a lot too. How do we adapt some of those yoga forms to the client's capability? So you will also even have answers to what if my client has amputations, can I still use mudras? Yes, you can. So if you do take those trainings, you will find out. So yes, all of these practices have risks, especially trauma therapy. But otherwise, it is a lot. It has a lot to do with how well you know your client and your clinical judgment about the safety that you're offering. Let me see. Tips on getting buy-in from people who think these sorts of activities like mindfulness, etc., are useless and silly. Oh boy, if you do sensory enhanced yoga, you're going to have a lot of that. Actually, one of our trainers, Jeffrey, I shouldn't forget his last name. I just met him 3 days ago, Sergeant. He has a video about that because he has 20 years of active duty in the U.S. military, and he was approaching yoga when the first time he encountered it with that kind of um, attitude. So he talks about that also in his video. I think you'll be able to Google it, or I can maybe somehow get that link to you. Any guidelines for practicing any of these with active psychosis and hearing voices? Grounding is very good for psychosis because we are, again, trying to increase this person's capacity to feel safe in the here and now and in their body, and at the same time do it safely. So whether psychosis or not, or presence of a lot of freeze or dissociation, sometimes it's difficult for people to be safe in their body because the body is not a safe place for them for a long time. It hasn't been. So you need to slow down, grade, meet your client where they're at first, and then gradually, maybe once they feel safe with you, lead them towards more presence in the here and now and taking in those safety cues. What tells them that they are safe in the here and now? So, same thing for psychosis and hearing voices. More messages. You're welcome for clarification around resourcing. I hope I don't miss any questions. Oh, there are guidelines in Q&A box. Any guidelines for active psychosis, hearing voices, tips of getting My role in AHS is I'm a mental health therapist with children, youth, and families right now. And where did I train for sensory enhanced yoga? Sensory Enhanced Yoga Institute out of the US, Lynn Stoller's Institute. And the link is in the presentation. Where do we find you in AHS? I'm in Strathcona Community Hospital in Children's Side, mental health, addiction and mental health. You're welcome for sharing the knowledge. And I believe we are done. And I hope that I haven't missed anything. If my answer to any of your question hasn't been elaborate enough, please feel free to contact me, and then I'll be able to maybe give you a more thorough answer in using a bit more time. Thank you very much for everybody's attention. And again, thank you very much for the conference organizers for making this possible for all of us. And thank you very much to SAOT. Have a good day.